All right, let's dive into one of the wildest stories in American history. We're going to go back in time, way before the internet, before 24/7 news, to a single night when the radio literally plunged a nation into chaos. This is the story of America's first mass panic, and believe me, you're going to want to hear how this all went down.
And no, that is not an exaggeration. Let that sink in for a second. This quote pretty much sums up exactly what happened on the evening of October 30th, 1938. It just perfectly captures the absolute terror that gripped thousands and thousands of people all across the country.
So let's jump right into the pandemonium. We're going to put ourselves in their shoes and try to imagine what it must have felt like when it seemed like the end of the world was being broadcast directly into your living room.
So picture this. It's a Sunday night. Families are gathered around their radios. This was the centerpiece of the home, right? It was their connection to the entire world, their main source for news, for entertainment. But on this night, that entertainment, well, it was about to feel a little too real.
The panic was immediate, and it was everywhere. Look at this list. Phone lines at police stations and newspapers were just completely jammed. People were literally packing up their cars and trying to escape the cities. Families were huddled together, praying. It was a total collective breakdown of reality.
And that's the big question here, isn't it? That's the mystery we're going to try and solve today. How does a modern, rational society get pushed to the absolute brink by something they hear on the radio? What were the ingredients for this perfect storm of fear? To answer that, we have to basically perform an autopsy on the event itself. So let's break it down. Let's look at the anatomy of this panic and uncover the 3 critical ingredients that made something impossible seem terrifyingly real.
Yeah, think of it like a recipe for mass hysteria. You need just the right ingredients, all combined in just the right way. First, you need a tense atmosphere that's already on edge. Second, you need a trigger, a catalyst. And third, you need a really powerful amplifier to get the message out there.
So ingredient number 1, the atmosphere. This panic didn't just happen in a vacuum. You got to remember, this was 1938. The country was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. The news from Europe was getting worse every single day, with the threat of another world war looming. People were already anxious. They were primed to expect the absolute worst.
And here is our catalyst. A brilliant and maybe a little mischievous young director named Orson Welles and his theater group decided to adapt the classic H.G. Wells novel The War of the Worlds. But here's the twist. They didn't present it like a normal radio play. Oh no. They formatted it to sound like a real live news broadcast, complete with reporters and experts breaking into a regular music program. It was designed for maximum realism.
And this brings us to our final crucial ingredient, the amplifier. In 1938, radio was king. It wasn't just background noise. It was the trusted source for live, breaking news. If you heard a news bulletin on the radio, you believed it, period. The medium itself gave the story instant credibility, piping this terrifying narrative right into the safety of people's living rooms. So with those 3 ingredients all mixed together, the situation just escalated with terrifying speed. We're now at the climax of the night. The exact moment when a little bit of confusion tipped over into full-blown nationwide panic.
Just look at how fast this all happened. At 8:12, it starts with a strange report about gas explosions on Mars. Less than 20 minutes later, by 8:30, you've got an on-the-scene reporter breathlessly describing giant monsters climbing out of a crashed spaceship. And by 8:45, listeners are hearing what sounds like a real-time battle where our military is getting wiped out. The pacing was just relentless.
So, how many people actually fell for it? Well, while historians still debate the exact figures, research done right after the event estimated that over 1 million people were genuinely frightened by what they heard. Think about that. 1 million people who, for one terrifying hour, believed their world was being invaded by Martians.
So, what happens when the sun rises on a world that, didn't actually end? Let's take a look at the fallout. That moment when the panic finally died down and a very strange reality started to set in.
The whole thing became the textbook example of what we call mass hysteria. It's a fancy term, but it basically means when a group of people collectively share an illusion and that fear spreads like a virus. In this case, the illusion was the Martian invasion, and the radio was the thing that spread it.
You can just imagine the public reaction was a total mix. On one hand, incredible relief. But on the other, for the people who packed up their cars, deep, deep embarrassment. And then there was anger. People were furious.
at Orson Welles, at the radio network, and for the very first time, the country started having a serious conversation about the massive power and the ethical responsibility of the media. Now, it's really easy to look back at this whole thing as just a quaint, kind of funny, historical story. But the lessons from that night, they are more relevant today than ever. This story has some seriously powerful echoes in our world right now.
I mean, look at this comparison. It's actually startling. Back then, the amplifier was the radio. Today, it's social media and viral news. Information that used to take hours to spread can now circle the entire globe in seconds. The basic mechanics of how a panic spreads are exactly the same. They've just been supercharged by technology.
And this right here is the most important takeaway. While our tools have evolved from the radio to the smartphone, our brains, they haven't. Our fundamental psychology is the same. We are still vulnerable to a powerful story that taps into our deepest fears. And that recipe for hysteria from 1938, it's still perfectly valid today.
And so, all of this leads us to one final, pretty chilling question. We don't live in the radio age anymore. We live in an age of AI, of deepfakes, of algorithms designed to spread the most sensational stories. So, given what we know about ourselves, could something like this happen again? Or is it possible it already is?